Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome to another Snapshot video. This is once again Snapshot 21w10a. We don't have a new Snapshot yet this week, but I thought I would try out something kind of cool in the meantime. So my buddy Joel and I do a podcast called The Spawn Chunks, where every week on Monday we talk about whatever's happened in Minecraft that week, we answer listener emails, and we discuss some of the upcoming changes to Minecraft. Right now we're talking a lot, obviously, about the stuff in the Caves and Cliffs update, and we were talking about the addition of lush caves into world generation, when towards the end of the episode, Joel had this idea.
If you're starting off with no endgame gear, you've got your iron pickaxe and you're trying to preserve it, and ores are harder to find because there's less air exposure. If you have access to bonemeal by composting moss and then growing more, you could potentially use moss to mine with bonemeal and save yourself a little bit of pickaxe durability. Now, you'd have to be looking for ores. Like, you're not going to get the stone, you're going to get more moss. But if you need the moss for growing food anyway, and you're going to be going through and the moss blocks don't overtake the ores, like they just leave the ores exposed, that could be really cool.
And so that got me thinking, was this going to be a viable mining method? It would be really cool to try out something that basically bypass the need for Insta-Mining stuff if you are just after resources. You don't need to set up a beacon, you don't need to get any of that stuff done. All you need to do is gather enough moss and have enough axes that you can strip out all of the blocks within a certain area. And since moss can spread so easily and axes are efficient to use on moss, and then the moss can be composted for more bone meal, you could potentially go through all of the blocks of a chunk, and that's what I've marked out here, a 16 by 16 area, and get every single available resource from within that without having to worry about setting up an Insta-Mining beacon, getting haste 2 and efficiency 5 and everything like that. We can do all of this with a standard Minecraft axe of iron level or above, as far as I can tell. So I set up this area. I've got a camera account logged in that we're going to see the top-down perspective on this, so we can see a little bit more about how this works and kick it into high gear when we need to do a time-lapse of all of this, because it is probably going to take a while. And I've set up two things on the sidelines here. The first is, of course, the mandatory composter setup. We're going to put all of the moss blocks and stuff in the top here, and then have that filter down through the composter into more bone meal that we can use to spread the moss some more. We are also going to be using a command block to give myself diamond axes. I've given myself a couple in creative and tested that that works, and basically I need to track how many diamond axes I'm going through as I chop down this whole thing, and then we can see if it makes for a good return on our investment. It probably won't pay off much in the early days, but as we get further down and we're more likely to encounter diamond ore, maybe we'll have a chance. This is a default world in Minecraft 21w10a, so we don't have lush caves or anything in this world, but chances are you might encounter some of them as you dig down through the world in the finished release. And I just want to test whether or not this is viable for an Insta-Mining thing for the standard survival Minecraft player. So I'm going to put myself in survival mode. We're going to log the camera account in. I'm going to hit the button for the first time. It's going to give me one diamond axe. And then the first task really is to shovel the terrain around here just so we can open this up to moss spreading to it. Now we need to make sure that there is dirt everywhere, because the moss will spread to dirt but not to grass. And I've seen a few members of the redstone and technical communities getting really excited about the possibility for using moss to set up a perimeter and kind of making contraptions that allow it to convert and destroy all of the moss using pistons. But personally, I'm coming at this from the perspective of a less technical survival player and just seeing if we can grind out all of the blocks in this chunk, maybe just as a test as well, to see quite how far the moss can go. And I am going to leave the day-night cycle running in this world, but the world is set to peaceful just so I don't have to worry about mobs and stuff like that. Obviously, if you wanted to do this in survival with hostile mob spawning and everything, you could probably just set up a perimeter wall around the outside of this, just put a series of walls or fences or something, and you wouldn't encounter anything aside from maybe skeletons shooting you over it, so it wouldn't be a problem. So with an unenchanted diamond shovel, it's taken me about 5 minutes to get all of the terrain here converted into moss, but that was just removing all of the grass. After this, it should be as simple as just Insta-mining all of the moss away using this axe, and of course we're going to be collecting some wheat seeds, some azalea, and some moss out of this, which we can all put into this compost. It's gone through about half a stack of bone meal so far, and we should just need to leave one moss block in here that we can use to propagate the moss throughout the rest of the chunk. And then after that, we should be able to get rid of all of these blocks pretty easily. We're going to go into time-lapse mode, and we'll see how long it takes to get rid of this entire chunk using only moss and diamond axes. So after about 10 minutes of digging, I've managed to clear out this entire area using moss. That's not bad going for 10 minutes and a single axe. I don't know if that's equivalent to strip mining with a haste beacon and a diamond pickaxe, but it's pretty darn close. We've also started to uncover our first patches of ore blocks. We've got some coal ore over there and over there, so I'm going to have to spawn myself in a silk touch pickaxe to clear those, just so that we can have a good idea of how much ore we're getting and still be able to work down through the layers. Obviously in survival you would want to harvest that stuff as you go. I should probably also double up on bone meal production just so I don't slow myself down here. A second composter would work pretty well, but as far as things go, the moss is pretty sustainable as compost. The azalea saplings compost pretty well too, and I'm almost through the durability on this diamond axe, but of course in a survival setting you might have unbreaking at this point, where the axe, if it had unbreaking 3, would last about 4 times as long. So potentially, what are we down, like 5 layers right now? We could end up getting rid of 20 layers before the axe was in danger of breaking, and then maybe if you get lucky and have mending, all you need to do is repair it. Okay, so I've just quickly given myself a silk touch pickaxe. It just has silk touch and nothing else. We're going to clear out the rest of these ore blocks, obviously in survival mode once I'm down here. We're going to get rid of all of these, and then we're going to continue our process of digging on down and see how far we can get with a few more axes. And with dawn breaking, it's time for a quick progress update. We have gotten down to Y level 30 so far, and to be honest, the resources I've found are not all that stellar. We have exposed a bunch of copper and coal ore in the walls, a little bit of lapis here and there, but we haven't got a huge amount of stuff yet, mainly because we're not down to the level where you really get all of those precious resources, but we've got 2 stacks of coal or so, we've got a little bit of each of the other minerals, and the best part is we haven't run out of bone meal the entire time because of moss actually composting down really well. I've put a few moss blocks in the walls to fill in the occasional cave entrances, but this has been a pretty solid chunk so far, and I'm hoping with a little bit more effort we can work our way down to those areas of the world that are going to have gold and diamonds and all of that extra stuff, and then we can start seeing how viable it is to use moss to insta-mine Deepslate, which I think is going to actually be a little bit more effective than being able to insta-mine stone, because Deepslate can't be insta-mined using a haste beacon right now, so I think that's going to be a more viable mining strategy and should potentially net us a few more diamonds. But I need to take a break. I've been doing this for 1 hour exactly, and I've gone through, I think if we can take a look at the stats here, I did look at these a little bit earlier, we've broken 5 diamond axes, and we're about halfway through the 6th, so I think in terms of unbreaking 3, we might already have broken 1 axe and maybe be halfway through another one. I think it's pretty viable so far. Imagine getting a villager who will trade you axes, a weaponsmith that will trade you axes with unbreaking, and having that guy hanging around while you get this done. I feel like this could be fairly doable. And while obviously it's not as exciting as caving, it's certainly a little bit safer, and digging this entire pit is a very satisfying process for perfectionists who want to see what everything is in a chunk and don't want to leave any block behind. So I think we're going to kick it back into a time lapse once again. We're going to try and get ourselves down to Deepslate level, and from there we'll see how we go. And after another 32 layers or so, yeah, we are at Y0 right now. We have made our first contact with Deepslate level. We've got 10 axes broken so far, and we are on the 11th right now, and we've mined 16,400 blocks with those axes. So a lot of work has been done. I'm standing what would be at the bottom of the world in a default 1.16 world, but of course, we have 64 layers further below this. And right now I need to make a quick run up to the composter. I need to refresh my ladder supply as well, which I'm just going to spawn in using creative. But of course, you could probably just chop down the nearest tree or whatever you've got to hand. And I'm thinking about trying this in survival, maybe on a live stream. In fact, by the time you watch this video, that live stream may already have happened, where we start from scratch, try and find a villager to trade us diamond axes, and maybe end up doing this in survival with difficulty enabled as opposed to on peaceful. It's going to be an interesting challenge, but I'm wondering maybe if we start further down in the world, we're more likely to encounter the precious stuff and have a better return on our investment of axes. But having given myself 50 more ladders, which I think will take us down to the lowest parts of the world, more or less, I'm going to crack on with this and have another shot at diving through these Deepslate layers, because now we are this far down, I'm very, very tempted to keep going until we hit the bottom of the world. Hey folks, welcome back. So our friend the bee is still buzzing around here, hasn't dropped into the hole despite the beehive kind of being suspended over a whole lot of nothing right now. That's right, we have dug this thing all the way down to the bedrock. Right there at the bottom of the world you'll see, and you probably saw in the time-lapse segment earlier, that yeah, we have reached the bedrock, and I decided not to try and take out all of the individual bits and pieces of blocks that were down there. But the fact is that we got down there exclusively using moss and axes, and the rest of the time we were taking out the resource blocks only, and this is what we ended up with. We ended up with 8 diamond ore overall, so I imagine a lot of people will be interested in how much diamond can you get using this technique, and the answer is not a lot, because of course you're going to find much more diamonds by exploring on the X and Z axes than you are on the Y axis. Diamonds aren't really clustered in vertical stripes or anything. You tend to find only a few ores per chunk, and they have been messing around with the ore distribution in snapshots, obviously as a reaction to the caves getting much deeper, so you will expect to find maybe like a few veins of diamond here and there, but for the most part, you won't really be finding all that much in just one chunk. The rest of the ores you can see we got a decent amount of, and you can also get a look at some of the proportions we're working with here. So of course, you're not going to find any copper and coal in Deepslate levels, but once you get down to Deepslate, you start to find more gold, redstone, and diamond in the Deepslate ore levels than you did in the levels above. Iron is the reverse. You'll find small pockets of iron in Deepslate, but you'll find a decent amount of iron ore from the overworld levels, the kind of, you know, the stone cave levels before that, and then lapis and Deepslate lapis, they're pretty much about the same. So it's quite an interesting snapshot of how we're going to look at ore distribution and where you're going to be finding ores more regularly. This chunk is just one example though, and you'd need a much larger sample size to really draw any conclusions from this. Luckily, the Minecraft team has left us some pretty substantial graphics showing how ores are distributed in the current snapshot, and once again, that is still potentially open to change. Let's take another quick look at the stats so you can see how many of the axes I have broken. 19 axes total, and times used nearly 32,000. So that is roughly going to be the amount of blocks in a chunk from surface level down to Y negative 64-ish. Obviously, negative 64 is all bedrock at that point, so we stopped a little bit shy of that. But yes, 19 diamond axes were harmed in the making of this video, and I'm about halfway through another one. I grabbed another just in case, but it looked like we didn't really use much durability on that one. So the 20th diamond axe managed to survive the process. A lot of blocks did not though, and we're going to get onto the pros and cons I think I've found during this method in a second, but first of all, I want to show you something else, because I had a go at this in a legit survival world, and honestly, this world turned out pretty cool. I did all this in the live stream that I mentioned earlier. I actually did the live stream basically mid-video and then came back to digging that giant hole because it took several hours to do, and in the process, I have made a little bit of progress here, and I've learned a few things about the way this is going to function, doing it practically in survival. This is a survival world that is set to normal difficulty. We managed to mine our way down here, as you can see from the little cave route that I took down to get here. I stumbled upon this cavern, and the cave bottomed out about here. So since this level here on downwards, I've been digging the whole thing down using moss. I'll upload the entirety of this video to my Pixel VOD's channel a little bit later today, so if you didn't watch it on Twitch, you can watch that. What we're looking at here is all stuff that I dug out using moss. I got down to about Y negative 48, yeah, and then we stopped because I found an abandoned mine shaft. There were a lot of mobs around, and I was running short on time for the stream. But using the same method, ladder up the side here, composting all of the moss as I went. I got a few bundles and bits and pieces. I ended up not running out of bone meal at any point during the process, as long as I composted all of the moss that I was gathering. And so naturally that left me with very few leftover materials at the end of it. What I did get is the resources that you now see in my inventory. So I got myself 6 diamonds, I got 60 lapis, decent amount of redstone dust. We actually lucked into a geode down there. So in the abandoned mineshaft down here, that connected to a geode, so I was able to make myself a spyglass and all sorts of other fun stuff, just testing out those features and how they feel in survival. And I did all of this in the space of 3 hours. And I didn't start down in this cave, of course. I started on the surface with nothing. And to be honest, this method really got a good start from the setup that we had. Over here in this direction. I actually spawned kind of in this snow plains biome, picked up a few rabbits for the bundles, went by this pillager outpost, figured there was probably going to be a village around, and I thought that's going to be my key to getting diamond axes cheaply without having to go mining for diamonds, right? Then I spotted this igloo, and I came down here into the igloo research station, where I found, of course, these two villagers, or rather one villager and one zombie villager. So what I ended up doing was curing the zombie villager using the materials here in the igloo research station, converting him into a weaponsmith, and trading with him, thanks to a stick trade from this Fletcher, allowing me to get basically 5 or 6 diamond axes with efficiency 3 for 6 emeralds total, which was pretty good. And I really wish that had been unbreaking or something like that, because efficiency didn't really matter. You're insta-mining with a diamond axe anyway, regardless of enchantments, so I think unbreaking 3 or even unbreaking 2 would have made them last a little bit longer. But despite that, I ended up doing a little bit less work because we were starting from a deep slate cave. I broke 3 axes, mined about 5,000 blocks. I still came away with 6 diamonds. No fortune or anything like that, so if I'd found that as diamond ore, I might have been able to gather a lot more from that. But really what I wanted to demonstrate was that this method is viable in survival. You can end up getting set up to do this in survival in a relatively short amount of time. And that's where I really want to start discussing the pros and cons of this method. So in the pros column, you have the fact that this is fairly quick to set up. If you get the right start with it, you're going to have a lot easier time getting all of this stuff going than you are of getting a full tier 4 beacon and going for haste 2 mining and efficiency 5. There's a lot more setup involved in speed mining the traditional beacon way than there is with a method like this. Another pro of this method is that it can still be used to insta-mine Deepslate. Deepslate has a longer time to break than stone does, and so you can't use the beacon haste mining method to insta-mine Deepslate right now. It just doesn't break as fast, and so it cannot be broken instantly, even if you have an efficiency 5 pickaxe and a haste 2 beacon. I think the other miscellaneous pros of this method are the fact that it's comprehensive. The fact that once you have dug out this entire area, you will know that you haven't missed any ore blocks whatsoever. If there were diamonds in that chunk, you got them. No questions asked. You are going to find everything that you dig down through, and you're going to come away with a guarantee of at least a few resources that you'll be able to take away. Other miscellaneous things about this, honestly, it's quite fun. It's a bit of a change from the traditional methods of strip mining and branch mining, and I actually found it quite relaxing to do. You're in an isolated cave, mostly away from mobs until you encounter a larger cave below you, and if you start lower down in the world, like I did with this cave, the chances are you'll encounter diamonds relatively quickly as you go through it, and so a systematic approach to a larger cave, as long as you were able to light it up and prevent mob spawns, could result in a decent return on diamonds. And now, of course, we have to talk about the cons, where, to be honest, I feel like this method really isn't as overpowered as it at first seemed. There are a few things that really hold this method up from being the new Insta-Mining, even though I've kind of titled the video that way. I like the concept behind this, but it lacks something in its execution and in the results that you get. So first of all, you cannot generate moss sideways. You can't really make tunnels with moss. You can only basically carve out the floor of the area that you've already created. And so the problem is you're only going to encounter diamonds vertically, like I said, and the most diamonds that you find are probably going to be from exploring the X and Y axes of the world, from exploring horizontally, laterally, as opposed to vertically. So while you are potentially going to find every diamond that's in the area that you're mining out, you're not going to find any more diamonds than the ore distribution allows in that area, which is usually only going to be a couple of veins at most. Unless you get really lucky, you're not going to find a huge portion of diamonds there. Second of all, while there are a variety of tools that you can insta-mine the moss with, all of the tiers of axes seem to do a pretty good job of removing moss. You can punch it as well, but it's not insta-mining. Unfortunately, you're going to be breaking a lot of axes while doing this if you're covering such a large area, because just the sheer amount of durability required to go through all of those moss blocks is probably not going to be as good a return on your investment as you think. I think even in the areas where I've dug out, 6 or 8 diamond ore, with fortune, that's not going to make back up the amount of axes that I broke in the process. So if you've got a villager trader handy, you should be able to get a bunch of axes from a weaponsmith, and then it's just a case of trading them for an emerald or two. But ultimately, yeah, you're going to break a lot of diamond tools in the process of this. Or alternatively, get yourself set up with mending, but then you've got to figure out XP and all of that other stuff, and by that point you may as well be halfway to getting a beacon in the first place. But I think the most significant point against this method, the thing that's probably going to stop me from doing it when we end up getting into the Caves and Cliffs update for real, is just that caving is more fun. I had a bit of fun experimenting with this. It was kind of a blast to do it on stream, and digging out that entire chunk was certainly an event, but caving in this update is really going to be the star of the show, and you're going to be denying yourself the experience of going and looking through these caves to get hold of the stuff that you want. Just flying through this cave here, I've seen a couple of pieces of diamond ore on the surface, and while this moss method allows you to gather anything that might be hidden in the walls, it's going to take so much time that by that point you've probably going to have explored enough caves that you will find the surface diamonds anyway. When it comes to being super comprehensive with mining out an area and covering as much ground as possible, branch mining is still potentially going to be more worth your time, as even though it takes a little bit longer to break your way through the deep slate levels of the world, you're going to come away with a little bit more ground covered on the horizontal axis, and therefore a higher chance of finding diamonds in those occasional veins. And traditional mining also has the advantage that you're not destroying blocks the entire time, or maybe you are if you're leaving them to despawn, but in my case, I like to gather a lot of building material by going through those early branch mining sessions, and especially with the new deep slate blocks, I think they're going to be really cool for building, so I want to gather a lot of them. This method effectively involves turning them all into moss, composting the moss down for bone meal, which destroys the blocks, and then doing that whole process all over again. So I came away with a few resources naturally, but nothing else really to show for the fact that I'd mined out this entire area. I have a giant hole in the ground and no blocks in my inventory, and that is because the moss just destroys them all. So do I think mining with this method is a lost cause? Personally, no. I don't think it's going to replace Insta-Mining. I don't think it's going to replace any other kind of mining, really, but it's something to give a try to. And if moss mechanics remain the way they are, it could be a fairly powerful tool just for clearing out an area, especially in the lower regions of the world where deep slate becomes a little bit more of a task to mine all the way down. Outside of that, you could even combine the two methodologies and branch mine a little bit and then use moss to break down the floor of your branch mine so that you cover the layers below it in the same pattern, and that kind of hybrid approach could end up with you exposing a lot more blocks and gathering a whole bunch of material in the process of that, and it could make these deep slate strip mines a little bit more effective. But I think for now I'm going to leave this in your hands and see what you make of it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed a look at potentially a new way to mine in the 1.17 Caves and Cliffs update. But that's going to be it from me. My name has been Pixlriffs. Please don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.